How you doing, everybody? So, I'm here to, as he said, talk about Triton. I consider it, and a lot of people consider it to be kind of the cutting edge or future of reef keeping. But the great thing about it is it's really nothing that's so different than what we're already doing. It's just a lot more, we're just using a lot more knowledge and making a lot more informed, conscious decisions to maintain these animals. So I'm just going to take you a little through some of the steps how I met Isan, who's here with us today. This is Isan's tank in Germany. I had the pleasure of going there last September and shooting some pics, spending a couple of days with him, picking his brain, and just learning as much as I could about the Triton Method and all the wonderful products and services that we offer. So I met Isan on a boat last June. We were going through the Flores Sea. It was a fluvial expedition where we were just going to go and survey the corals and fish of the reef. It was myself and Jake Adams and Vincent Chalias and Bali. So I spent about 11 nights on that boat talking to Isan, and it turned out we had a lot in common. And he was looking to offer his products in the US, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. So this is us on the boat. Isan's on the right, and we got the whole crew. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I just want to let you know, kind of give you the whole picture how we met, and I believe in that foundation. So Isan on the boat took a bunch of samples. While we were surveying the corals, he was busy taking water to be analyzed in his lab. So he took water from around the base of the corals, at the surface, all different areas around different species of corals, took tons of notes, recorded the pH, temperature, salinity, so he can use that to add to the water analysis that he would then do back in the lab. So it took several hundred samples, and that was a typical evening on the boat after a full day of diving. So a lot of fun. I own, maybe some of you know me, I own Unique Corals with Scott Fellman, and I've been in this business about 20-something years now. I have a store in New York City, Manhattan Aquariums, and we do custom installations. So I've been in this business since I was 14, working at fish stores. It's a passion and a love of mine, not something I just got into, several years ago. It's something I absolutely love. So what attracted me to Triton is it perfectly aligns with the goals of the reef hobbyist. Our goals should all be the same: to grow colorful corals, to keep equipment, electrical costs, and ongoing maintenance costs and labor to a minimum, and to minimize die-off and issues. And the way to do this is to be very smart about the equipment that you select, the method that you use to maintain your aquarium, and the decisions that you make to maintain your aquarium. So the philosophy behind Triton is very appealing because it just totally aligns with these goals, which I think a lot of people, they kind of lose track of their goals, and they start going online and they ask questions and they use this filter and that filter and this guy dosed that chemical, and then they just realize they're so far off the path and they want to go back to that vision they had when they initially started. So what we're trying to do is just give people a recipe, a formula to follow that's worked for many people without getting derailed so easily. And that comes through knowledge and talking to people. We never ask anybody to just do blind faith. We just want people to ask questions and learn and realize that it's not rocket science. It just makes sense. The Berlin method, I like to talk about that because this is what I've used to maintain successful reef tanks for many years. And in a lot of ways, Triton is very similar to it. It actually adds to what the Berlin method has brought to our hobby: the utilization of live rock for aerobic conversion of waste by bacteria, converts it to the nitrogen cycle to produce nitrates. The nitrates are removed via anaerobic activity and by algae within your algae filter. People do water changes for additional nitrate removal, to smooth out ionic imbalances, and for replenishment of trace elements. The Berlin method works. They use protein skimming for organic nutrient export. Then for supplementation, you use Meerwasser, calcium reactors, two-part dosing, a lot of different ways to maintain your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium levels, and add the trace elements. But it's great, but it's a little bit blind. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that things have advanced, and now we have the ability to not do things so blindly. The Triton method, very similar. We use live rock in the system, protein skimming all the time, a large algae filter, roughly 15 to 20% of the tank volume. And this is going to act as a buffer. I don't use the word buffer as in the context of carbonates, I use it in a term almost like an insurance policy. If the tank is producing a lot of waste, that algae filter can just step right up and use the waste. If the tank doesn't have a lot of waste, the algae filter isn't going to grow so much. It stabilizes the aquarium, and people don't really understand what that is until you've had it and had a successful aquarium for a while with a very stout algae filter. It just can knock the peaks when you're having a rough time. It can just smooth things out. So the algae filter, it's not a refugium. You're not trying to grow all kinds of things in there. It's a purpose-driven algae filter. Its purpose is to remove phosphates and nitrates. It also produces amino acids, sugars, carbohydrates, and it also pulls from the matrix of seawater. And I'm going to get into that a little later, but when we're adding these elements to our water, not all the elements are utilized by the corals within the tank. Some of them are used by the algae. If you're not using them, you're going to get a surplus. So it rounds out the pull on the matrix of seawater. Fluidized phosphate reactor, that's going to handle excesses of phosphates. And then macro and trace element supplementation and stabilization of the matrix of seawater through the dosing of the base elements. When I say matrix, what that means is when you look at your macro and trace elements, it's called the matrix of seawater, and it's fixed in all the oceans. You may have differing amounts of salinities, so you may have more of that stuff, but the ratio of calcium to magnesium to potassium to bromine, all those things are fixed in that ocean. So the corals living in that area, the corals living in Bali, don't care about the water in Australia. They care about the water in Bali, and it's a fixed ratio from day to day to day. The coral reefs are they've been dubbed the most stable environment on Earth. And the key to keeping a successful reef tank is stability. The better you maintain stability, the more success you'll have. And when you talk to people, some people keep their alkalinity at 12, some people keep it at 9, and they have success, and there's truth in that. But it's because they maintain it at 12, and that guy maintains it, or woman maintains it at 9. It's the stability. When you try to jump all over the place, corals can't adapt quick enough, and if there's too many things wrong with the system, you have a crash, and it's a domino effect. So with the Triton method, we're all about creating a stable environment. Best way to do that is to minimize variables and just get those animals to spend their energy to grow, not to constantly adapt to little changes in their environment. Okay, and high flow, just like on a coral reef, super high flow, high ORP, and in the algae filter as well. You don't want stagnation to occur. So some of the things that Triton users employ in their systems: no micron socks, so mechanical filtration, no regular water changes once stable, no deep sand bed or substrate in the refugium, high flow in both the display tank and the algae filter, and ICP testing for the validation of your husbandry techniques, and also to fine-tune your specific system. There's no such thing as a product that works on every system, but this comes very close, and you still have to make small changes for your tank. If you have a tank full of softies versus your friend who has a tank full of SPS, or predominantly softies or predominantly SPS, the needs are going to be slightly different. One tank's going to need more iodine or more zinc or potassium than the other because those animals are pulling more out of the matrix. The only way to know which elements your tank specifically needs is by testing. And now we have access to testing for some of these lower concentration trace elements through the ICP test. And another thing, this isn't written in stone. I encourage people to run micron socks in the beginning. It's kind of like training wheels. Once the tank gets going, then you could start stripping these things off. So in the beginning, when the tank is not stable and you're producing a lot of detritus, run the micron socks, pull some of that waste out. But then once you see the coral starting to grow, they're using that energy. And you can say, you know what? With or without micron socks, my tank runs great. In fact, when I take the micron socks off, I find the corals do better. If I get a little detritus in the filter, I can just go in and suck it out. But if you have good flow through the filter, it keeps the detritus in suspension, the bacteria coats it, lands on the corals eat it. If you don't have enough flow, the detritus can settle on the corals and burn them. So that's why good flow in your filter, good flow in the tank, it all just keeps things just churning. Some pictures, if you note, the full blanket lighting on the tank. This is LED lights. These are the Lani lights. I think he's got 16 on that tank. Super high par. It's not a multi-chip LED where you're having, an area of intensity and then some areas of shadowing. The thing that I really like about the lighting here, and you can recreate this with a lot of different types of light, but the uniform light field I think is the most unique thing about this. It's like when you're diving, the coral, it's a three-dimensional animal. There's light hitting it all over, not just on the top. So a lot of our lighting techniques, I think, are a little short. Like we take the PAR reading right at the top of the coral, but then on the side, there's like no light hitting it. So the top of that coral is doing all the work, all the energy for that whole coral. So if you can get light around the sides and bouncing off the walls, the coral's gonna thank you for it. This is showing the lights lifted up. And the tank is about 5 to 600, right, Isan, 600 gallons or so?
Yeah, 650.
650 gallons, yeah. It's been running about 3.5 years now, 4 years? 4? Okay. So the growth is phenomenal. Again, the growth is attributed to creating an ultra-stable environment. It's not that the calcium inside the base elements is a magical potion that we don't, other people don't use. A lot of people have great growth, but when the coral spends every day growing and not adjusting to fluctuations, you do a 15% water change, now your potassium goes down, or this goes down, or your lithium goes up higher, and your alkalinity drops, that coral is going to say, oh, I can't grow for the next week, I need to adjust. I'm not going to die, but I need to adjust. And then things settle out, starts doing great, looks even better after the water change because now it's got more trace elements, nutrient levels have dropped. The next week you do another water change, or you change this filter, or you do that, coral stops growing, it's got to adjust, and when the coral stop growing, they stop pulling down the alkalinity. Now the alkalinity goes up, now you got to test, now you got to lower your dosage. It's like this cat and mouse game, and you'll have success, and the corals will grow, but when you can get all those variables minimized and just have the tank maintain that stability, the corals just respond by growth. Just some shots of the tank. I don't recall ever seeing a tank that's been this healthy. It was like diving a coral reef. The corals are just insane. The humulus just growing out of the water. The water the corals are growing so much that they can barely get to the overflow box. And when you look inside the filtration, I'll show you, there's no chiller, it just runs ambient, the ambient temperature is good. You'll see another video in a second. That's a frog spawn, there's my finger on the bottom. Just insane, hundreds and hundreds of heads. Vincent Thomas's tank. I need to update this and get more pictures. There's a lot of people posting on there's a Triton Facebook account in the UK, and I think it's up to like 1,700 members now, maybe 1,000 active, and there's tons of pictures on there. I just need to email them and get pictures of those aquarium, but we encourage people to go on there, or the new Triton forum. It's forum.triton.de, and it's in multiple languages, and it's just a wealth of information. You can talk to other Triton users and representatives of the Triton companies in different countries and just pick people's brain. It's just a one-stop shop for all the Triton knowledge. But this is a typical Triton setup. You'll notice the micron sock in the corner. That's optional. Again, once the tank is running and you've really found that balance, you can not use the micron sock. So a very thick, good algae bed that should be harvested so that the water doesn't clog up. And then the water will go over a little weir plate, and you have a good protein skimmer and a fluidized reactor and a pump sending the water back up. This is like a mini version of Isan's filter. Here's another setup. Actually, it's the same, I think it's the same picture, same tank. That's another one. You want very intense light at the right spectrum to grow algae. In America, and I have a store, and I talk to a lot of people, and most people, when they set up a refugium, they just put whatever light they have laying around, I'm just gonna throw it and grow some algae. You need very, very bright lights of a very low spectrum, 3,800, 4,200 Kelvin, very, good wattage. You wanna grow the heck out of the algae, just like you're trying to grow corals in the display tank. You have to give them a lot of love. This is Isan's filter, which he's extremely proud of. It's very dirty, but you know what? It's the filter. It doesn't have to be clean. You see a lot of beautiful sumps out there. That's not going to maintain corals. It's going to be nice when you're talking to a friend, you show it off. The corals don't care about CNC edges and ultra thick acrylic. They have their needs, and they're different than ours. So this is a reverse photo period. The water comes in on the left side. It's got a lot of flow. It's got chaeto and probably a couple other species of algae in there. If you can mix up the species of algae, it'll just add a little bit more dimension to the filtering abilities. It'll pull different elements out, utilize different nutrients, just creates a more diverse environment. ATB skimmer, and then their version of the fluidized reactor that does not use a pressurized top. It's more of a basket style where you just pull it out, dump the media, put it back in. As far as the phosphate removing media, we recommend the Triton AL99. It's a white, it's an aluminum-based media, and you should alternate every couple of months with like Verpasse, a very high purity iron-based. And the iron base will remove any traces of aluminum that may be leached into the water from any type of aluminum, which is a white type of phosphate removing resin. And then the aluminum will remove the iron. So alternating between the two will help to keep those in check. And not every Triton tank has a problem with phosphate, but it's there to keep the phosphates in check. The corals, the color, everything is kind of enhanced when you can keep the phosphates between 0.02 and 0.10 in my experience. But stability is key. If your tank just runs at 0.10, leave it at 0.10. If it runs at 0.05, leave it at 0.05. Don't chase those numbers, because those that yo-yoing is not good for the corals. Now this is a video of the filter. I apologize for the size. You see the high flow. The base elements are in the back being dosed. So the base elements are dosed, the starting dose is 10 milliliters for every 25 gallons per day. And you set that based on your alkalinity. We target an alkalinity of 8 DKH. Now as the tank matures and the corals are pulling more carbonates out of the water, your alkalinity is going to start to drop. So it's very important in the beginning to test your alkalinity even daily and adjust your doser so that you're maintaining your alkalinity at 8. And when you set your alkalinity at 8, based on the 10 mLs for every 25 gallons per day, you're going to be dosing channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and channel 4 in the dose are exactly the same. It's a balanced product. It's to be used at the same dosage. So it has calcium, it has magnesium, it has potassium, it has vanadium, iron, all the good stuff in it. And it's made for a balanced reef tank, and it needs to be put in with the same dosage. So if your tank is using a lot of carbonates, then you're going to have to dose more. Some people that have had their tanks running for a while with a lot of SPS are dosing quite a bit of it. But they're not using calcium reactors. They're not using any two-part. This replaces everything. It replaces Meerwasser. It's a one-product thing that replaces all your macros and trace elements. It keeps it very simple. So just some of the key points. And then I do want to take some questions. I'll let you guys read that. And then I'm going to talk about the Icp testing too. There's a lot of knowledge, or misinformation I should say, out there. I get people that call me, I run Triton US, and people say, oh, you know, I like the Triton method, but there's so many chemicals and so many things I have to add and test for and do this and that. I said, no, you've talked to the wrong people. It's not that complicated. We recommend testing as often as your individual tank needs. It could be twice a year, once every 3 months, maybe in the beginning a little bit more. But this isn't to be used when your corals are dying and your fish are dying. It's not going to save it. You know, that's what your hobby kits are for. You need to have these, ammonia, nitrite, and phosphate, and your salinity refractometers on hand. That's the first thing you go to if you notice a problem. This is for fine-tuning and the overall long-term big picture, and to just show that your husbandry techniques are working, and it validates the results that you're getting on your hobby kits. Some people, they don't realize that their reagents are bad, or they've been looking at it wrong the whole time, and this just tells you that what you're doing is correct. Another big thing is for spotting unwanted heavy metals. Some people think their RODI is set up properly, and it's not. They had a bypass, or they're on well water, so they don't use a DI or whatever, and they find out that they've got contaminants that are through the roof. So even just doing an initial Icp test, regardless of the method that you employ to keep your animals, could be beneficial. Now this is the Icp machine. Icp stands for Inductively Coupled Plasma Optical Emission Spectroscopy. It uses an inert argon gas to heat the sample up. It's about 15 milliliters of salt water that you'll send to us and we send to the lab. And when that gas is vaporized, the elements that are within the sample move down from an energy level, an excited state, down to a less excited state, and they give off a light. And that light is detected by detectors inside the machine. And the spectrum of the light is equivalent to the element. The concentration of the light is equivalent to the concentration of the element present in the sample. So through some software, it'll tell you these are your elements present and these are the concentrations present. And it spits it out into a nice report that's emailed to you. I'll show you that in a little bit. This is the test sample that you would get. It's 2 vials and a security card. You'll order the kit from a number of different places. Hopefully some more stores will start to carry it, especially after we talk to people here at MACNA. And you'll buy the kit. The retail price is around $50. You'll get 2 15-milliliter vials. You scoop the water out of your aquarium, seal it, stick it in the envelope, put the card back in. You'll write your 4-digit Triton ID on it, which you'll get from signing up on the Triton website. You send it to us. We bulk ship to Triton in Germany twice a week, and we're going to start doing 3 days a week. And usually within 7 to 10 days, you'll get your results emailed to you. And then people call me up when they have their results and they have questions. So you got 32 parameters here. It starts off, the top of it is cut off, but it says unwanted heavy metals. And looks a little bit intimidating until you understand what you're looking at. You have all the elements on the left side, and then the analysis is the results of your test. The set point is natural seawater, and then the deviation, how much your water is differing from natural seawater. The warning lamp is a guide to tell you what actions to take. It's not written in stone, it's just advice. If it's green, you're good. If it's yellow, take note, make some changes, and if it's red, we strongly suggest that you do something about it. The next column would be the liters. You can fill out your quantity in liters or gallons, and it's very important to fill it out. Some people just skip that, or they just write 100, whatever, because they don't know how many gallons are in a tank. But it's important because the next column, your correction dosage and then your maintenance dosage, is telling you how much you're off and how much to dose to correct it based on your size aquarium. So if it tells you you need to add 60 mLs of potassium over the next 3 days, it's doing that based on your deviation and your tank volume. So you have to put the correct tank volume in. So if we go down to a little bit lower, it's going to give you your sodium, your calcium, magnesium, potassium, all the way down to the trace elements as well, and extremely useful information. People, they want to see all greens on there. We tell people don't chase numbers, especially with trace elements. We're just starting to understand the role that trace elements play, and it would be foolish for us to say your tank will only run great if your vanadium is at 1.2. That's not the way this is intended to be used. This is a guide, puts you in the range. The closer you get to natural seawater, probably the better chance that your tank has at being successful, because those are the parameters that those corals have gotten used to. So a lot of people think that we target numbers and we say, well, unless your iodine is here, your chromium is there, all other systems are not up to par. This is not the case. And if anybody calls me up, I'll give you that same advice over the phone. The last page tells you the warnings, the things that were off, the phosphorus and the phosphate levels. This is someone else's, but we're not going to go through that. I do want to take some questions. This is the base elements. It's a 4-part mix to be used with a 4-channel doser. You can use a 3-part doser and combine 3A and 3B. You just have to do it according to the instructions. And some people have experienced some precipitation in the lines of the dosers, especially if you're not using it fast enough. So we do recommend that you treat it as a 4-part. But again, for those that only have a 3-channel doser and don't want to get a 4-part, you're more than welcome to do it as a 3. This is a custom 3 gallons per chamber that we built for somebody for each of the elements. And as the doser pulls, they go down nice and evenly. And we can see exactly how much is going into the aquarium. Works really well with the dosers from Neptune, as you could just go online and just boop, 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 go, add a couple of mLs to each channel. Just makes it real easy. Some people dose other things like AquaPower, iodine, depending on your specific tank's needs, you may find that you just need to dose some other stuff. This is someone else, a little bit of iodine. People have fun with it, you know, labeling it. These are the line of trace elements. And again, these are to be used. We would love to give you the advice on which ones do what to the aquarium and when they're actually, you know, beneficial to add. It's not something that we tell people you have to add, you know, a ton of it. All this stuff is in the base elements. This is another product salt. This shot I took in September of last year, and then the same coral I took off Vincent's video. I took a still shot of it about 4 months, 3.5 months later, and it's like doubled in size. So it's pretty impressive growth. This is kind of a funny video. His clam shoots water into the lights like every 4 or 5 minutes. Just thought I'd throw there for amusement. And just a video. So this is the last slide. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them. And then we have Isan here who can answer some stuff too. Yeah?
How do you recommend switching over a mature tank to a Triton Setup?
It's a great question. With the stability comes the shock to the animals when you switch. So we try to, well, forget that. I was going to say, we try to encourage people to start with Triton from the start, but obviously you have an aquarium, so you're not going to take it down. So you would look at the methods that you employ now and try to incorporate the things that we talked about, like the algae filter, the fluidized reactor. Try to get the structure of the aquarium set to be more Triton-like. I wouldn't say getting off the water changes yet. Do an ICP test and see where you stand. And then the supplementation, like if you're doing 2-part or a calcium reactor, you can pretty easily switch those over, but keep the alkalinity where it's at now. And then slowly over a couple of months, bring it down to 8. You don't need to change everything at once. You want to minimize the shock to the aquarium. So if you're relying on water changes for nutrient export, you know, try to come up with a way to put algae on the filter in the system. I realize it's hard for people to just add an algae filter to an existing sump, but there are other ways to put algae on the system. There's a Pax Bellum reactor. It's like a canister filter, but it grows Chaeto in this long tube, and the water goes in the bottom. Think of a UV sterilizer, but a vertical UV sterilizer. The light goes down the middle, and it's a plant spectrum LED, and the Chaeto grows inside this. The water comes out the top, and that's going to be similar to the algae filter. But as far as converting over, there's no real specific answer to that. It really depends on your system, but you want to do it slowly. It's really the base elements that you're going to use to replace the trace elements and 2-part that you're doing now. And I'd be happy to talk to you. I'll be at the booth all weekend, so come over with specific questions and we can map out your aquarium how to do it. Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot.
I have a few more specific questions.
Right. Well, let me get a couple of people, but definitely if you could come to the booth. Another question? Yeah.
Is there a way you can put what your tank is specifically, like more SPS, more soft rolls? Because you have like your correction dose and then you have like your maintenance dose. Is that based on?
So that's all based on natural seawater. Remember, this is a one-package-fits-all tanks. So we all want to target natural seawater. But if your tank is using more iodine or something, you're probably going to deviate more than the other person's tank. So it's all kind of built in based on the volume of your water and the deviation from natural seawater. So if your tank has a lot of softies and it's using more iodine and you weren't aware of it, your tank will probably show less iodine on the ICP, so you're going to have to add more over the next 3 days than the other person. And known values of natural seawater. Now, we can, in the near future, set the set points to reflect certain oceans. So let's say the Red Sea, which is a little bit saltier, that can be the set point. I mean, that's like 2.0 level, but I think we can all agree that calcium at 450, magnesium at 1370, those are known values that we all want to target. So it's not, the water from Bali is not that different than Australia. Maybe Australia is a little bit saltier or vice versa, but there's just getting it close to those waters. The trace elements are pretty consistent in the world's oceans.